Good morning, everyone. My name is Tushar Patel. I'm from the University of Lethbridge, whose indigenous name is Iniscum, meaning second buffalo stone. I work at the University of Lethbridge as a Canada Research Chair in RNA and Protein Biophysics and also an Associate Dean for the Faculty of Arts and Science. Today, we have an esteemed guest with us, the President of the SSHRC, or Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, with us, Dr. Ted Hewitt. Dr. Hewitt has done a lot of leadership role over the last many decades, starting with the dean and then associates vice president research and vice president research, and most recently, as we all know, the president of SSHRC. We will have some conversation questions with him today, and I'm looking forward to have some insights of SSHRC, the operations, and other aspects. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be here.
So with that, our first question, our conversation topic is, as the president of SSHRC, can you please elaborate on the role of social sciences in economic impact? Because this becomes a lot of time the conversational topic about convincing the taxpayers why research in humanities and social science is very critical.
Absolutely. But first, let me say what a pleasure it is to be here, especially to be interviewed by you. Not only given your role, but also my first job was at the University of Lethbridge.
Oh, cool. I did not know that.
I worked there for 3 years in the Department of Sociology, and my son was born there, and I look back on that time with great fondness. So it's great to be here. Well, you know, when we talk to Canadians, we talk to members of Parliament, we talk to people working in Ottawa, the first thing we say is that, you know, the economy and our prosperity depends a lot more on a lot more than just the actual technologies and the innovations that are developed in our science labs and elsewhere. That in fact, in order to bring those to market and make those successful, you have to take into account the way that consumers react and respond to whatever that innovation or product or technology is. But that's just the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, the economy is fundamentally a social construct. Somebody was telling me the other day that our entire monetary system is based on an act of faith. That people believe money has value, and they act in accordance with that, and we treat it as if it has value.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I go into my bank account and it's on the web and there it is today, and I'm just hoping it's going to be there tomorrow, but it's completely based on trust.
Yeah.
So the economy itself as a social construct needs to be conceived of and needs to be contemplated in that way. It's no coincidence that the research that's done on the economy, that's done on business, and for the most part on innovation, entrepreneurship, it's all social sciences and even humanities research in the case of design and marketing. So it's fundamentally important. I wrote a paper a couple of years ago with Ed Greenspan from the Public Policy Forum, where we explored this. And what we concluded, you know, based on research that had been done on the economy and innovation, that there are 5 steps to innovating a product, starting from, you know, trying to convince your boss that you've got something that can sell. At least 3 of those steps relate primarily to social sciences and by implication humanities, including the start, convincing your boss. But if you think about it, like the whole production and planning piece, convincing people that they need and want to buy your product, so understanding your markets, all of the financial pieces that are involved, the regulation, understanding government regulations, understanding impacts on the environment, and of course the whole financial act of selling, collecting the money and making a profit. So I don't think I need to work very hard to sell this notion, and yet, you know, there are people who will say that, you know, if you want to build economy, all you need is the widget. It's so far from the truth. So, and that's where we play our role.
No, I think that's a great role that SSHRC has been playing in Canada for many, many years now.
And people forget, you know, we fund research in business schools.
Yes.
And the economists in Canada are, I would say, some are funded by NSERC actually, but for the most part, funded through SSHRC.
Yeah, we have a lot of interdisciplinary within the research, where researchers are also applying for NSERC and SSHRC grants, because the research at the interface of both aspects. Yeah, as you said. So in your view, with your experience, what are the biggest challenges of research enterprise in Canada, and how granting agencies can help address some of those challenges?
So, I mean, I said in the panel today, I was talking a bit about how this is as much a journey as it is a solution.
Yeah.
And, as the research community changes and the nature of research changes, we really have to be attuned to that. And that is a challenge. And we have to be listening and we have to be responsive. How best should we organize ourselves? How important is it to offer programs that are harmonized? How important is it to, and this is a big challenge, to ensure that that talent, that new researchers are being nurtured, that they have a place. And this isn't all under our control, by the way, in terms of whether or not they're positions for younger researchers, but it is in our control to ensure they're well supported as students. We do this in a context of relatively fixed budgets, and there will always be fixed budgets. It's not a black hole, as we heard this morning in more than one panel. Governments have to make decisions, they have to assign priorities, and we hope that we'll be seen as a priority, and we work very hard to that end, and we want to be able to support community. So I think, those things are pretty critical. I would also mention things like security, which is becoming increasingly a matter for discussion and concern in Canada, maybe a bit less in social sciences and humanities, and quite often I see those as the bridge to maintain diplomatic relations. But I absolutely understand, and SSHRC runs many of the big multidisciplinary programs on behalf of other agencies. We have to be careful. Open science, getting information, getting the results of research in the hands of people who need it. We heard about that also earlier today at the conference about, we got a lot of good science going here and a lot of good policy research. How do you move that to the people who need it? How do you involve members of parliament and people who work in government? How do you make them aware that it's available? How do you engage? This is a constant preoccupation and a constant challenge. And I think the last thing I would say is just the funding that would be required to keep the machine going, to keep our researchers well funded, to keep projects alive after a time. And I do want to say, in the case of the social sciences and humanities, we fund probably the lowest proportion of our community of the three councils. Fewer than 30% of researchers in social sciences and humanities receive funding at any given time.
Wow.
We see that as an opportunity, and we always try and find ways to fund more because we know that there's a lot to deliver.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a great perspective. So SSHRC released their strategic plan in 2022 for 5 years. And I was going through it, I remember two of the 5 key pillars. They are grow Canada's research talent.
Right.
And the other pillar is strengthen the research enterprise in Canada. Yeah. So now we are in 2023, and I was hoping that you could reflect on those 2 pillars based on what's been doing and where are we going with it.
So those are 2 interesting elements of the plan, and the second one I thought was new. I didn't think it was novel.
Okay.
How would SSHRC actually strengthen the research ecosystem? But what we had in mind there was in part related to the first one you mentioned, and that I talked about a bit. We have to find ways increasingly to support students, and graduate students in particular, and also their transition either to industry and the world of business and work, and also academia. So certainly we've attempted to do that through programming, through support and webinars and other ways we work with students through CAGS, for example, the organization that represents graduate studies, in order to make sure our programs are accessible, they're harmonized, and we reduce barriers. Obviously, we need more funding if we're going to strengthen our ability to support more students, and that's a firm commitment for us. But we've tried to make it easier to get funding. We cut deals. We signed an agreement with MyTax, for example, to help fund students through MyTax, who are already on SSHRC projects. The other piece is all about how we strengthen and make more resilient the community. And one way I already talked about, and I talked about this morning, through support for early career researchers. So we want to make sure they're funded as well as anyone else. So, we threw out the CV for some of the new programs. And when you see the news in a few months, I hope, when the CCV finally meets its maker and it heads off to its resting place, it will be replaced with something that looks more like a bio-sketch
which is be
than
amazing.
a CV.
Yeah.
That's going to be better for early career researchers who can now go head to head, with the more experienced researchers who have very long CVs. The work that we've done in promoting, okay, now you're gonna have to edit this one out, because the work that we've done in promoting equity, diversity, and inclusion strengthens the research community,
Yeah.
because it's more inclusive. It allows for more diversity, brings people in who might not have had a voice. We think that only strengthens research. More perspectives, more points of view, more research, better research, research excellence, absolutely. And the last thing I would say that falls into this category is the work we do in reconciliation. We've been working very hard with the other councils, with Indigenous communities, researchers for sure, but also community members, students, to try, under the spirit of reconciliation, to again ensure a degree of inclusiveness, of understanding, of openness to change that will again bring in these views and these viewpoints in the interest of diversity and inclusion, but also to provide a base of support for an Indigenous research community that's very much connected with its own community and communities, and does research that it feels is important in the service of that. And we think that's the true spirit of reconciliation, and that's what we have to offer and what we're working towards.
Yeah, no, thank you. And that's a great perspective. And from researcher side, if I may, CCVs are also long and cumbersome and doesn't really add to the grant proposal.
Yeah.
So it's great to hear that eventually it'll meet its end. On the NFRF side, which we had a session earlier this morning, one of the nice things about NFRF is that there are no CVs attachments required with the grant proposal, and both of these avenues actually help.
That's true.
Fostering your idea of making equity, more accessibility and those types. So it's great initiatives, and we appreciate that.
And we will, as I said, this model will eventually replace the CCV. So it won't be a new CV. It's going to be a bio-sketch model.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. But it's also one way we use NFREF as councils to try out new things. We experimented with a lottery. Yeah. Which was a great way to support researchers, particularly who may be disadvantaged, by more senior experienced researchers who again know how to assemble some of the things that they know reviewers will be impressed by, like impact factor and things like this. So we say, okay, to this point, all of these proposals are fundable, and then they go into the ping pong ball machine, and we come out with it. We've tried it to see how that would work. We've also tried proportionality. So if 15% of applicants are early career researchers up to 6 years, then we'll ensure that 6% of awardees. So these are all ways that we help test the system, find ways that where things work, we can adopt them more broadly. But we always do this through consultation. It takes time.
It does.
And we always think very carefully about the impact of these things in everything we do on the community.
Yeah, and your opponent consultation is very important because you want to be more inclusive, to see voices are heard.
And it's who you talk to.
Yeah.
And who did you talk to? And we used to get this question a lot in Indigenous research and changes we'd made. Well, who did you talk to and who are they? Now we know, we start at the very beginning from the design stage. We talk to our Indigenous partners, we construct the discussion, we engage with them. We conclude and release our findings with them. This is the only way that you can proceed in that case. But all of that, I think will really help strengthen the research ecosystem in this country, make it very unique.
Yeah, no, this is great perspective, and I really appreciate what you have been doing with SHERC. So with that, are there any new avenues coming to SHERC? Are there any direction that we are heading that you would like to share with us today?
I think so. We want to continue on with the work that we've been doing. Whether it's strengthening the ecosystem or promoting EDI, early career research. Certainly, we anticipate and welcome the government's guidelines on security, which we'll implement. I think for us, we're moving more securely into the international space. We've always had very good international relationships with agencies
Okay.
in Europe, in Latin America. We now have an international strategy or plan that we've been rolling out, looking at other parts of the world, looking at different types of collaborations, and we're going to continue to do that work. We also want to approximate a little bit more to the private sector and the business community, which goes back to our initial discussion,
Yeah.
because we think sometimes the role that we play with respect to business is not entirely understood. And it doesn't mean we're going to overturn the whole structure and this is the end of fundamental research and we're going to become a business organization. Not at all. But we think that promoting the agency and the impact that the research we do, not just to government and policy, but to a broader sector within society, and business is part of civil society, that can only be good for us. So a lot of businesses, for example, they know about the benefits of social science research for human resources, and there's lots of products and packages they buy. And sometimes they talk about ESG and the need for businesses to understand environmental, social, governance issues, but there's so much more.
Yeah.
When you're developing a technology, as I was saying earlier, like, are people going to even use it? Or watch out, if something happens as you're developing your technology, how do you avoid kind of negative sentiment, misinformation, poor information to really start to interfere with the real benefits your product might have. So you always have to have in mind the market and who does this research.
Yeah,
and also the work that we do in design and the work they do in humanities and design is absolutely fundamentally critical. So we want to bring people together. We've always had great support from the business community. We want to start to bring in more folks to speak with us about what we could do to be a little friendlier than we've been and to broaden our base. And I'm not just talking about big companies and corporations. I'm talking about startups.
Yeah.
We're having conversations with university tech transfer offices, and our programs are actually pretty friendly to that, particularly programs such as Connection and Partnership Engage. We have about 1,000 companies who are involved with us. NSERC has like 5, 10, I don't know. But we're getting there as they start to realize there are real benefits to that. So in general, we're looking to build our operations, fund more researchers, and start thinking about expanding our horizons, partnering further, and in different ways as I described. But it's always exciting, it's always a pleasure, and everything we do in consultation, with our researchers.
That's a great perspective, and I really appreciate for your conversation. So my last question would be: you have been a regular member of CSPC, you have been attending this for many, many years now. We've seen some good examples of the impact of these types of conversation and networking. What is unique to you? What is your perspective about CSPC's initiatives and the work that CSPC has been doing?
Well, there are few opportunities in Canada where you can bring all of the different stakeholders together in the same room.
Yes.
So you have students, you have researchers, you have early career researchers, you have people who work in policy, potentially folks from government, I'm sure, who will be here throughout the course of the conference, the granting council, the chief science advisor. Like, where do you get that? And you really don't. And it really has to happen. And I think in our session today, for example, we can, as the CRCC, we can reach a wide audience, and we can deal with their questions, and we can show what we've been able to do. And also as granting councils in the course of this and other sessions, to really explain, how we work and how we think to everybody in the same place. Is the system perfect? Well, we know it's not. I have people, though, I have to say, I travel a lot. I just came back from a week in Brussels. I meet with colleagues all over the world. We're not doing too bad. And quite often they will say so.
Yeah.
But we could be better.
Yeah.
And we have to work harder to be better. But in the end, we'll do it in our way. And we'll find the Canadian solution, and we'll support, our researchers in the way that they deserve. And in the way that, best benefits our country and our futures. Yeah. So I'm quite confident. And this is what you're doing here every day in these discussions that occur in every session all day long. And not only, I forgot the temporal aspect as we were coming over. I saw colleagues who I used to work with from ISED from 10 years ago, who are coming back, giving up their time. contributing to discussions, as well as people who are here from SHRC and from other agencies and across government who've been in their post for less than a year. So this is such a great opportunity once a year and through the year, through the various events that CSPC holds, to keep that conversation going.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and
Anytime.
your conversation. I like some of the points that you mentioned, especially the one where you said you travel a lot, you have perspective on different funding agencies. And I think the one thing we lack is taking the ownership of how good programs we have and brag about it. There's always room for improvement, but we should brag more about our accomplishments and our programs. So,
well, maybe not for the tape, but you can if you want. But when I was in Brussels last week, I was at the European Research Council, very prestigious program, who said to me, Canada is well, and the agencies are well known for their work in equity, diversity, and inclusion. Are well known for the pioneering work that you've done in setting up NFREF with its objectives and the way that's structured. Well known for the innovations you're taking with respect to peer review. So I thought, well, if that's true, like, you just made my day. Because in just mentioning three things, and I hear this across government, and we go to the U.S. and they say, well, you guys are way ahead of us in reconciliation. We went to South Africa and they said, well, you're well ahead of us in terms of how you collaborate and talk to each other. We're thinking, like, everybody tells us we don't, right? So, like, I hear this every day. And go to Washington, see what it looks like. Panch is there. Don't use this. But if you look at how this is structured in the U.S., with NSF, it has part of the social sciences framework. For the rest, you got to go to NEH or maybe NIH, right? There's no real overarching counsel to that. Do people think these are not effective agencies? Quite the opposite. But it's a different structure. It's a different model. So we have to be open to learning more, but we can't keep hitting ourselves over the head, that we're not doing things right.
100% agree.
We got to stop that.
No, I 100% agree with you. We have to take the ownership and we have to brag about it.
If you don't like it, make it right. But for God's sakes, do it. For heaven's sakes. Okay, just for whatever. Don't use that at all. But we have to have the conversation, and we have to understand what it is we're looking at, how it works, and what works. And not just assume because you don't know. Right? That's a terrible way to do that. So.
Well, thank you so much again for your time.
Okay.
Thank you.